Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Atlanta Falcons on Monday Night Football. This Week 1 matchup to start off the 2015 season on Monday night, a doubleheader on Monday night. We're going to go over every possession and the stats and give our analysis. But let's start off with the first possession, and the Eagles would get the ball first, and they would go 3 and out, as they would end up punting the ball to Atlanta. So now the Falcons would take over. They'd go 52 yards in 7 plays, and they would end up with Matt Bryant coming out to attempt a 41-yard field goal. He hit it, and it was 3-0 Falcons over the Eagles. Then the Eagles would go 3 and out for the second straight possession, as they would punt the ball back to the Falcons. And the Falcons then would go 58 yards, but Matt Ryan would throw an interception in the end zone as Kiko Alonso made a spectacular catch as he picked off Matt Ryan. And the Falcons didn't come away with 7. They didn't come away with 3. They didn't come away with any points in that red zone possession. It wouldn't end up hurting them in the long run, but it kept the game close at 3-0 still. And so now the Eagles would end up punting after 4 plays, as they just netted 20 yards on the possession. And so now the Falcons got the ball and they went 3 and out. They actually lost 5 yards overall on that possession before punting it to Philadelphia, who would go just 11 yards in 6 plays before punting the ball back to the Falcons. So now the Falcons would take over at the end of the first quarter, bring the quarter to a close with a drive that would end up eventually going 88 yards in 11 plays and resulted in the game's first touchdown, as Julio Jones caught a 4-yard touchdown pass from Matt Ryan that made it 10-0 after the extra point from Matt Bryant. So it's 10-0 now, and now the Eagles would actually put together a drive and go 69 yards in 11 plays to score a field goal at the end of the result of the possession, as Cody Parkey hit a 29-yard field goal to put the first points on the scoreboard for the Eagles and cut the Falcons' lead to 7 with the score Atlanta 10, Philadelphia 3. So now the Falcons would end up going 3 and out, and they would punt the ball after just netting 7 yards on their next possession. The Eagles would go 3 and out as well, as they ended up just getting 9 yards on the possession. And they ended up with the Falcons now going 25 yards in 9 plays. There was a lot of penalties, and they ended up with a field goal attempt by Matt Bryant, a 39-yarder. It was good with just over a minute left in the first half, and it was now back to a 10-point lead for Atlanta with the score Falcons 13, Eagles 3. So now there would be an interception on the first play of the possession for the Eagles, as Sam Bradford was intercepted by Moore. And so the Falcons would get the ball back. In one play, though, they got a touchdown. Actually, at first, Matt Ryan was sacked and fumbled it. It was recovered by Bryant, but then illegal contact by Kiko Alonso would end up resulting in a no play. So they ended up with a first down and a retry, basically a do-over. So they got 5 yards on the play, and Matt Ryan hit Julio Jones for a 22-yard touchdown. It was a spectacular play as he danced down the sideline, and the touchdown made it 20-3, as the Falcons had just scored 10 points in just 20 seconds, as there was just a minute left, less than a minute left, about 45 seconds on the clock before halftime, with the score now Falcons 20, Eagles 3. So then it would go to halftime after 4 plays, and they actually lost 8 yards on the last possession, as they just took a knee. They went to half. And so now, coming out of halftime, it looked like it was all Falcons in the first half, as the Eagles were really struggling on offense, as the offense never really got going in the first half. But in the second half, the first possession, the defense comes up big for Philadelphia. Is on 3rd and 14 after having sacked Matt Ryan on second down, a sack by Fletcher Cox. Matt Ryan gets intercepted by Thurman, so Thurman gets the pick, and now the Eagles would take over after just 2 minutes into the third quarter, and DeMarco Murray would end up running for an 8-yard touchdown run, as they were right there in the goal line. And so now it was a 10-point game with the score Falcons 20, Eagles 10. So now the Falcons would go just 13 yards in 5 plays, and they would end up punting the ball back to Philadelphia, and the Eagles would put together an impressive drive going 95 yards in 13 plays, capped off by a touchdown pass from Sam Bradford to DeMarco Murray, a 5-yard touchdown pass, and an extra point by Parkey. And it was now a 3-point game with the score Atlanta 20, Philadelphia 17. So now, after that impressive drive, the Falcons would respond with a nice drive of their own as they went 62 yards in 14 plays. They actually brought the third quarter to a close, opened up the fourth quarter, and then Matt Bryant hit a 44-yard field goal to extend the Falcons' lead to 6 and bring it to where they would have to score a touchdown for the Eagles if they were going to tie the game, and an extra point would take the lead. But at this point, it was Falcons 23, Eagles 17. So now the Eagles would do just that as they went 80 yards in 6 plays. They scored a touchdown as Ryan Matthews punched it in from a yard out. Parkey hit the extra point, and it was now Philadelphia in the lead with the score 24-23. Philly over Atlanta as they took the lead for the first time all game as their offense finally got going in the second half. But the Falcons responded as they had temerity, and they came right back, and the tenacity to go 51 yards in 5 plays. They didn't get into the end zone, but Matt Bryant, the sure-footed one, came through with the 47-yard field goal, and that put the Falcons back in the lead, up by 2 with the score Atlanta 26, Philadelphia 24. So now the Eagles would take over with about 6.5 minutes left to play, down by 2. And they would end up with the ball starting off on their own 20, and they would pick up some first downs, and they would end up all the way down on the Atlanta 26 with a 4th and 1 after having a no gain on 3rd and 1 the play before. And so they brought out Parkey to attempt a 44-yard field goal, but it was no good as it was wide right, and so it remained a 2-point game with the Falcons still in the lead as the Eagles missed their chance to go up by 1. And so now the Falcons would end up taking over at that on the 34, but they went 3 and out and burned just 37 seconds off the clock, and they would have to punt the ball back to the Eagles. So now the Eagles would take over with less than 2 minutes left, and they had a chance to win this game as all they needed was a field goal. And on first down, Sam Bradford goes to Sproles. Sproles picked up 2 yards to make it 2nd and 8 at the 16 as they were backed up not too far out of their own end zone. And now the no huddle in the shotgun, Bradford, there was an incomplete pass, so now that's up 3rd and 8 at the 16, still out of the no huddle in the shotgun. Bradford looking for Matthews, and he's intercepted by Allen, and that would end up bringing this game to a close as the Eagles were done, and now all that was left to do was for Matt Ryan to take 3 knees as this game would end with the final score Atlanta 26, Philadelphia 24. So it ended up being quite an exciting game. It was 2 different games almost. In the first half, it was all Atlanta. In the second half, it looked like it was all Philly. But in the end, Atlanta came up clutch with 2 field goals in the fourth quarter as they ended up ensuring the victory, as they did not let it slip out of their hands, as the Eagles almost came back to win, but the Falcons came up clutch when they needed to, came up with those drives. They didn't result in touchdowns, but Matt Bryant hits those long field goals, especially that 47-yarder that put him back in the lead by 2 in the fourth quarter there. And even the defense coming up really big for the Falcons. They were very impressive. All around, the Falcons looked really good. Tevin Coleman, a very impressive performance as well. Let's look at the stats. Matt Ryan, 23 for 34 with 298 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. So he was looking good in the first half. He wasn't looking as good in the second half, but when it came down the stretch in the fourth quarter, he did lead them on those drives to those field goals. They didn't get in the end zone, but they did end up winning the game in the end. And Sam Bradford, he was struggling in the first half, but he ended up going 36 for 52, for 336 yards. He had a touchdown, but he also had 2 interceptions as both quarterbacks threw 2 picks. Of course, Bradford just the 1 touchdown. So he looked better in the second half, but it took some time to get going there. But on the ground, the leading rusher was Tevin Coleman, the rookie from Indiana, 20 attempts for 80 yards, as he had a strong performance in his first game in the NFL. The leading rusher for the Eagles was Darren Sproles, with 5 attempts for 50 yards, as DeMarco Murray was shut down just 8 attempts for 9 yards. He did, however, have a touchdown. And then in the receiving end, Julio Jones had an impressive game. Of course, he always does. I mean, he's Julio Jones. And he had 9 receptions for 141 yards and 2 touchdowns. Roddy White, 4 receptions for 84 yards. Freeman out of the backfield, 3 receptions for 29 yards to go along with his 18 yards off of 10 carries. He was kind of struggling on the ground, but he did get some production out of the backfield catching the ball. And then on the other end, Jordan Matthews had a big game with 10 receptions for 102 yards as he was lighting it up in the second half. And Sproles had 7 receptions for 76 yards to go along with his 50 yards on the ground to give him a total of 126 yards offense. Zach Ertz, 3 receptions for 46 yards. And Ryan Matthews had 3 rushes for 4 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 receptions for 24 yards. And we look at the defense, and the leading tackler in the game was Paul Warlow. He had 9 tackles in this game for the Falcons. They were looking very impressive on defense. And we also see that Moore and Allen each had a pair of pickoffs for the Falcons. They didn't end up sacking Bradford, as Bradford was getting rid of the ball pretty quick. He's, definitely got a good presence, and he throws an amazing pass, but he wasn't connecting too much with his receivers. Of course, the Eagles got a pair of picks as well as Kiko Alonso. That catch was almost like the defensive equivalent of that Odell Beckham catch, the way he grabbed that one out of the air. It was quite the interception in the end zone, and if he hadn't made that interception, that would have been another 3, maybe another 7 points for the Falcons, as they were really pouring it on in the first half. Even with that interception, they didn't let that stop them. At that point, they hadn't scored, but they went on to score 20 in the first. Thurman with a pick as well for the Falcons. Their leading tackler was Maxwell. And then we look at the team stats, and actually the Eagles had more first downs. They had 23 first downs, and the Falcons had 21 first downs. Of course, both teams were struggling on third downs, as they both struggled to even hit 30% efficiency, as the Eagles were 3 for 12 on third down, just 25% conversion rate, and the Falcons 4 for 14, just 28% conversion. The Eagles did, however, complete a 4th down. That one time they did attempt it. And the Eagles actually had more total net yards with 399 versus 395 for the Falcons. But the Falcons had more rushing yards. Of course, that was not expected, especially with the game's defending rushing champion, who only had 9 yards in this game, although he did get into the end zone. But the Falcons had 105 yards. It's Coleman, a big performance, those 80 yards. And the Eagles just 63 yards on the ground. That's net rushing yards. Net passing yards, the Eagles 336, as Bradford was not sacked at all, and 298 net for the Falcons, as Ryan was sacked 1 time for an 8-yard loss by Cox there. And we look at the time of possession, and that is really where the Falcons won this game. They had the ball for 35 minutes and 27 seconds. The Eagles had for just 24 minutes and 33 seconds. Of course, with that fast-paced offense, that's the thing. If it doesn't result in first downs, then you just got your offense off the field real quick, and now your defense is going to be on the field and get worn down. Although the defense did seem to play better as the game wore on. Of course, they were keeping the defense off the field more in the second half, but it seemed like the Falcons were out there the entire first half. It seemed like they had the ball the whole first half. And of course, a lot of that had to do with the production on the ground in the running game. The Falcons can play like this, then they have a really good shot at winning their division there in the NFC South. The Eagles, I wouldn't really be too worried about the Eagles moving forward here. I saw a lot of good things from them. It was just they were really struggling in the first half, but you saw that it kind of came together in the second half. They just got to get it going earlier in the game. And I think that if they can kind of pick off from where they left off in the game in the second half, next week in the first half, they should be all right. And like I said, the Falcons continue to play the way that they played here. They should have no problem in the South, as they looked very dominant on both sides of the ball. Their defense looked incredible, especially in the first half. They looked really good. Dan Quinn has them playing, looking almost like they did over in Seattle when he was the coordinator. I mean, they were getting after the ball, gang tackling. They were doing an excellent job. The linebacking core is looking really solid. They were looking good up front, and the secondary was looking solid as well. They got a couple of picks. Their defense in Atlanta is looking really good. So it'll be interesting to see how they do moving forward. And Matt Ryan is Matt Ryan. He's always going to get the ball in the air, and especially with the talent he has around him with Julio Jones, they're going to have a big year. With Tevin Coleman, if he can keep producing the way he was on the ground, then the Falcons are going to score a lot of points. So a lot of interesting things coming out of the game, moving forward, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated, especially for those of you who are still listening right now. I really, really do appreciate it, and I am interested to read your comments. So thank you once again, and I hope you're having a good day and had a great weekend and enjoyed all the sports.